Hello, I'm Chris. I'm at a radio course IG4LAB. I'd like to take this opportunity to demonstrate and explain the very versatile software package known as SVXLink, developed by Tobias, call sign SM0SVX. About 15 years ago I found this somewhat nascent application that had started life as a Linux version of EchoLink. It intended to be incorporated into a terminal program to form a simplex node or duplex repeater for RF users rather than the Windows version used by a PC connection or an external link to an existing RF node. Having a PC operational 24/7 is a considerable drain on the infrastructure, so the arrival of a small form factor computer such as the Raspberry Pi, or its clones for that matter, has become somewhat advantageous. So, for the first time, around 2009 I believe, I installed a Raspberry Pi into Foxtrot 5 Zulu Golf Mike VHF repeater, together with its EchoLink node at the core, and linked to the internet. SVXLink seems to have been largely bypassed by people in the UK and Ireland, but it has seen a tremendous following in Europe, and in some small way in the US as the Open Repeater project. The UK users seem to have been more taken with All-Star based on the asterisk telephone protocol. However, in the several years since Tobias first conceived the application, this software has become a very successful repeater control system and highly capable of significantly greater things. So while living in France, they built the start of an SVX Reflector on a Linux-based PC. Around the same time, I built a second repeater on 6 meters, also using SVXLink and another Raspberry Pi, and finally a third repeater on 29 megs. The object was to be able to link all the systems together, providing total interoperability. So by transmitting onto the 2 meter repeater, for example, the audio would pass on to the other 2 systems, and vice versa. Around this time, a good friend, Jean-Philippe, Foxtrot 5 November Lima Golf in Brittany, developed a large group of users on a Reflector and produced a fixed menu system permitting users all over France to interface by RF across the whole country. He was able to mimic chat rooms by establishing multiple servers running SVX Reflector. Users were able to change their connection to the servers by DTMF codes. While successful, the method in which the change was made to the procedure for the QSY was a little unwieldy, causing a stop and reset and restart of the software in the respective nodes. This current dashboard is a live picture of what is going on in France on this particular method at this time. There are currently 133 stations linked onto this dashboard across France, and that is literally from north to south. Each station is shown there with its department number. In the most part, these are simplex nodes, but there are 1 or 2 repeaters visible in amongst the call signs. French repeaters are indicated by Foxtrot 1 Zulu or Foxtrot 5 Zulu in their call signs. Then Tobias developed a new protocol in SVX Reflector, completely updating the whole SVX package. So, what we have now, the current state of play, is this. This is currently the portal installed on a server here. Basically what it means is that any station, whilst having a passive connection to the SVX reflector, it is totally standalone. This might seem a little confusing at first, but basically each system operator configures his own node or repeater to have a base talk group 0, as a default setting. A second setting provides the repeater with a list of monitoring talk groups that can give incoming and outgoing fixed connectivity to other nodes in the network, having compatible talk groups within their own configured list. A third possibility exists where a user can establish contact on a fixed talk group with another user elsewhere on this unique network and agree a mutual change of talk group, listed or unlisted. Having done so, the reflector accepts that communication is now possible both on the newly constructed talk group and the rest of the remaining network simultaneously. Whilst each repeater can be considered standalone in every sense, the system operator can add at his discretion a wider scope of coverage of his repeater by replacing the talk group 0 with talk group 235, as an example, that effectively gives the repeater UK-wide coverage. This is dependent on the repeaters on the network and the addition of talk group 235 in the monitoring list of those repeaters. Given the state of inactivity of some repeaters, this may be an impetus to greater use. Why 235? And why numbers anyway? Well, with the pre-existence of a talk group numbering system in the DMR digital radio world, it seems sensible to make this work here too, particularly as there are some versions of SVXLink capable of interfacing with DV switch. I have experimented with this aspect, but there are some incompatibilities that render it impractical in the construction of FM nodes. So I've tended to stick with FM for the moment. The methods used in SVXLink to make all this possible are simply the use of DTMF sequences, beginning with 9 and ending with hash, or pound sign if you prefer. A repeater system operator can additionally set up macros, short dial sequences to shorten some of the DTF strings that could effectively be misinterpreted. I'm not going into the actual codes for the moment, but they are available in my help files accompanying this video. As well as SVX reflector connectability, SVX has a few other modules that make it stand out. Firstly, as with most new projects, a help module is available, but does require a little maintenance for individual nodes. Secondly, any station wanting to connect to an established node for the first time would need to check his audio, so there is a Parrot module, where a transmission made to the node is stored locally and then repeated back to that station. Next, as mentioned, the EchoLink module was one of SVXLink's first intended applications, but being at the heart of the node opens it up for greater exploitation. Naturally, the SVXLink modules contain some safeguards and indeed some benefits. First, the safeguards, where during any activity that opens a module causes a temporary disconnection from the reflector network until cessation of the activity, when the network automatically reestablishes itself. The benefits are that as a repeater-based EchoLink node, it is capable of multiple EchoLink connections simultaneously, depending on the settings in the configuration and the capable bandwidth of the internet connection. EchoLink is a command by DTMF, but access differs from the SVX reflector sequences. The module MetarInfo, when configured, provides information on airdrome weather as given by the Volmet service. The DTMF sequencing here is also unique to the module. The system operator has to program the airport ICAO codes for the airports into the configuration file in order for it to work correctly. The propagation monitor module, incorporated into SVXLink, requires more configuration, including the setup of email addresses, but once complete provides the repeater audience of warnings of enhanced propagation on various bands. There is a QSO recording facility present as standard, but not enabled unless required by the repeater system operator. The system operator also has private access codes to enable shutdown and restart as circumstances dictate. That covers the generality. Can't even say the word now. That covers the generalities relating to the package, but the system operator, with maybe some assistance, can fine-tune many of the parameters that give the repeater individuality. These include the amplitude of the audio throughput, identification of the repeater by voice or CW, or both, configuration of the idle tones and sound samples, the configuration of the hardware attachment, and general day-to-day maintenance. Putting together such a node is relatively simple, requiring some basic skills and almost readily available components and modules. The Raspberry Pi is a little difficult to source depending on availability, but even a Raspberry B Plus is capable, although rather slow. Preferably a Raspberry Pi 2B or 3B is preferable, because they are 4-core processor units. In fact, one of my nodes is a Raspberry Pi 3A, running quite happily. The only difference there is that it has only a Wi-Fi connection and no hard wire. A Banana Pi or Orange Pi would work, but there is some exploration required of the form factor. The USB Soundcard is the next item required, but of the design where the chip is fully exposed on the top surface of the board. Usually this is a CM108. Usually available under a mark called $Tech. But this permits the additional modification required to perform the press-to-talk operation and squelch monitoring with minimal wiring to the transceiver or transceivers. Radios having an external squelch connection are preferred as receivers. Motorola or Kenwood X Professional radios are very suited for both transmit and receive. Modifying the sound card is quite fiddly and will need high magnification and a very small soldering iron and a steady hand to attach the external components to the wires on the visible chip. There is a website for full instructions on how to do this, and that will be also in the help at the bottom. Once the hardware is assembled, the last piece will be a high quality micro SD card of a minimum size of 8 GB, but anything larger than 16 GB is a complete waste. So be judicious. Full instructions of creating the operating system and the subsequent compilation of the software can be found in the links in the accompanying text below. In any event, always allow a minimum of 90 minutes uninterrupted time to install the software. It could be longer on a Raspberry Pi B+, or even a Raspberry Pi Zero of the earlier mark. The problem with the Raspberry Pi Zero is that you don't have external connections. You will have to do some considerable modification. On the Raspberry Pi 3B, I have successfully built a working node in 45 minutes, from compilation to actual transmission on the radio, but I have had a great deal of practice. The script I have prepared is aimed at the English-British speaker with associated voices, but has a component for French speakers and French voice if required. Whilst it does most of the heavy lifting, there are some nuances to observe as the script runs. Once built, the chances are that the node may not work until the configuration is completed, but will be as close as an individual node can get. There are built-in tools for setting the audio levels, but quite likely the sound settings, PTT and the COS configuration and certain timings will need adjusting. To assist in the final setup, the user can install a web-based dashboard. And there you have one. This is the current dashboard of my UHF repeater running under the new rules generated by Ofcom recently. Full instructions also are in a link below. To enjoy full connectivity, I recommend the partly configured connection to the UK reflector that is already operational. But again, follow the instructions in the links. Finally, this may look a bit complicated, especially for the non-Linux user for the first time, but it's really not, as all the necessary commands are included, and you can always read the script to pick up a few more tips. Perhaps most daunting is understanding the directory structure within the Debian operating system and moving from file to file, directory to directory. But as I have explained in the text, most of the compilation is carried out by the script running commands automatically. As a project, I feel the most important thing is that you enjoy it. Secondary is the ability to repurpose an old radio, or radios, and finally to reactivate the FM bands that have suffered some lack of use in recent years. Make it fun. If it's not fun, you're doing it wrong. Nice to chat. Bye for now.